Step out, Liz Reed.
Step out! Step out. It was 1978. I was 13 years old, and I got my first experience with diversity. I was in my classroom, and Miss Sheila was our substitute teacher. She was beautiful, poised, elegant black woman. And she told us stories about how she danced. She danced on stage, she danced on screen, she danced on TV. I, too, wanted to dance. Miss Sheila inspired me. So, I signed up for her dance class. That day, that summer, I stepped out to the bus stop. I stepped on to the bus, and as it neared the destination, I looked around on my bus, and I noticed the people who were on the bus looked different than me. There was the lady in the front. She had curlers in her hair and a bag over her head. The boys in the back, bell-bottom pants, as slick as could be, and big hair. So big, they could keep a pick in it. I stepped out off the bus and I walked to the destination. When I arrived in that classroom, I stepped in, I looked around at all the people in the class. And they looked more like the people on the bus than they looked like me. At that moment, I felt it. That fear, real similar to the fear I felt right before I walked up here. That fear overwhelmed me. I felt like I don't belong. I don't fit in. There's no way I belong in this class. I wanted to run, just like I want to run now, but I didn't. Miss Sheila reached out and she said 2 words of inspiration. She said, "Step out." So I stepped out onto the dance floor and I began to dance. I stepped and I leaped and I turned. And as I was stepping, I realized I was not stepping in time. I couldn't quite get the steps down. I tried with all my might. I came back week after week, and I tried to dance. While I didn't become a dancer, I did learn a profound lesson when I stepped into that class. How many of you in this room have ever felt like that 13-year-old girl? Raise your hand if you've ever felt that fear. You ever felt like you didn't quite fit in, that you didn't belong, and you looked around and you just seemed different than everyone else? I look around and I notice there's a lot of diversity in this room. Yes, some of us have long hair, some of us have short hair, And yes, some of us have no hair. Yet, we all have something in common. Those feelings. The day in class when I felt inspired, we've all felt that. The day in class when I stepped into that room and I was so full of fear and inadequacy, we felt that. We also felt what it was like for somebody to give us 2 words of inspiration, to reach out and say, step out, step out, step out. Make the difference today. When you see somebody in the back of the room, when you see somebody that looks different than you, when you see somebody that may not quite feel like they fit in, be Miss Sheila. Encourage someone to step out, to step in with the rest of the group. See, that day, I did get that dream. I became like Miss Sheila. Step out. Thank you.
Contestant number 2, Joshua Heyman, From a Different Lens. From a Different Lens, Joshua Heyman.
Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine that all 5 of your senses are being stimulated simultaneously. You see bright flashing lights. You hear annoying repetitive sounds. Brr, 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 brr. You smell food that turns your stomach, then puts a bad taste in your mouth. And now all of a sudden the tag on the back of your shirt feels like the legs of a centipede tap dancing on the back of your neck. Now open your eyes. Breathe deeply. It's okay, you're back. None of those things are happening. But for my 9-year-old son Brady, he's never back. Back to feeling that he's okay. Because everyday feelings like those can overwhelm him and trigger other responses that can distract him from tasks, that can create anxiety and even evoke panic. That's because my son Brady has autism spectrum disorder. In the 5 years since his diagnosis, my wife and I are still learning how he adapts to this world. And it's our job as parents to help him cope with the cacophony of information around him so that he can process it and learn to cope on his own and be a fully functioning adult. But in order to do that, we have to be able to get to his level and see life from a different lens, through Brady's eyes. The different symptoms of autism vary depending on the child or adult that has it, but Brady has a couple of significant tells. He has an irrational sense of fear in some cases, and a complete lack of fear in others. Case in point, he is so afraid of fire that he has to leave a room when a birthday cake arrives. But conversely, when we're walking in a parking lot, he'll just wander aimlessly as cars go by. Also, in order to deal with all of that messaging in his head, he does an activity called stimming. It's short for stimulating. He will soothe himself by repeating a word or a phrase. He likes to say, great, 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 which can be annoying to you or me, but he really needs that in order to be able to center himself and still be able to focus and be able to learn. These are just a couple of examples, but it's understanding how he does these things and why he does these things to be able to see from his perspective. My father has had a hard time coping with the thought of his grandson having autism. When he first learned that Brady was coming about and he was going to be a grandfather for the first time, I'm sure that it evoked all sorts of thoughts of, I'm going to be able to take him fishing. I'm going to be able to talk baseball with him and maybe even bring him to the firehouse where I volunteer. Well, those are all activities that he either won't do due to lack of caring or can't do because they evoke negative responses. Recently, my father told me, he's just not the grandson I thought I would have. I was absolutely gobsmacked and so angry and hurt that he would even think that of his only grandson. But the words spun around my head and they could not exit my body. How could you reject your only grandson just because he doesn't fit your prototype? Now, before you lose all respect for my father, just know that I know he loves my son just as much as I do. But he's just not willing to step out of his comfort zone well enough to be able to understand things from his perspective. That puts the onus on me to bring together the two males that I love the most in this world to find common ground. So I have to appeal to my father. Dad, just look at what I've learned, not only about my son, but of myself. I know that I am far too quick to anger. And understanding that when he does things like stimming, he's not doing that to be rude or to be disrespectful. Oftentimes, he just needs to be removed from a situation, or he needs to be able to feel that he can be comfortable in a space. I also know that I am an audible learner, and Brady is a visual learner, as are most children on the autism spectrum. I tend to be that person that uses 20 words when 5 will suffice. Whenever I do that, Brady tunes out. That's why visual cues are much better than audible cues. This is Brady's goodnight routine. I have repeated this so many times to him. Brady, after bath, get your pajamas on, hang up your towel, brush your teeth. Now that I have this in my hand and it's not hanging up in the bathroom, I'm sure my son is just sitting in the middle of the floor just looking around. But all I have to do is say, Brady, sign. Oh, 1, 2, 3. I can reduce the correction that I need to make, and he already knows what to do. He's intelligent. He knows what he needs to do, but every once in a while he needs that visual cue to help him get through and to cope. But it's understanding that connection that helps me open up a whole new world with my son that I never really knew existed. And I can find common ground and get him to understand and be able to do things that I like to do and I want to do. He winds up his night by watching a cartoon called Sonic Boom. It's based off of a video game, Sonic the Hedgehog, that some of you may be familiar with. And there are some great characters there that I get to voice and be in the theater of his mind and the voice in his head. I mean, Dr. Eggman, we're breaking into your lair again. Oh no, I've had to replace that twice already. I'll bill you for the door. Well, what would Lady Walrus say? Oh no, it's not unsafe for my baby. Dad, you're being too loud for Stu the librarian. Quiet in the library. But you see, Dad, getting to his level and understanding from his lens, you never could know how impactful and what you could be missing out on when you have the courage to get to his level. Just the other day, I saw him with the cupcakes, putting icing on the cupcakes, and he goes, "Goodbye, muffins. Hello, cupcakes." Do you have the courage to see life through a different lens? Madam Toastmaster.
Number 3, Phil Barth. Why? Why Phil Barth?
What do you think? Tom Cruise? Madam Toastmaster? Fellow Toastmasters? Anyone? Okay, maybe not. But I do like my prescription Ray-Ban sunglasses. They fit so well. In fact, there's just enough room between the lens and the eye to fit one adult wasp. Ask me how I know. I learned this important lesson on a sunny Saturday in July. I'm packing the family van for a trip to Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. Now, normally when I pack the van, I like to see the van out of both eyes. But suddenly my left eye was completely blocked by a wasp. Now, I don't know how he managed to squeeze his body up in there, but I do know this. If you ever come eye to eye with a wasp, the last thing you want to do is squeeze your eyes shut really, really tight. That's unfortunate. Because the first thing you're going to do in that situation, you're going to squeeze your eyes shut really, really tight. Even the most calm person in the world will at least blink. And if you even blink, that wasp is going to turn your eye pink. And that just might make your vocabulary shrink. My vocabulary shrunk to 15 words. 5 of them were dirty. I said, oh, why? Oh, son of a... 1. That little... 2. Stung me! Oh, I'm going to smash his. 3, 4. My kids are standing off to the side. The oldest one looks at his 2 brothers and says, uh-oh, Dad's going to say 5. Well, I did not disappoint him. Well, let me explain. My eyes swollen shut. I'm using all the fancy number words. Basically, I'm devolving into a pirate at this point. And in the midst of this devolution, I stepped forward and landed on my Ray-Bans. Oh, my prescription Ray-Bans! Do you realize those things cost me $195? It's been said that time and ice packs heal all wounds. Well, you wouldn't have known it if you saw me driving to Kentucky. Stupid wasp. Cost me my Ray-Bans. About halfway down, my wife said, hey, how about we stop at Dairy Queen? I don't think a blizzard's going to help. A chocolate chip cookie dough blizzard? And it turns out that time, ice packs, and chocolate chip cookie dough blizzards heal all wounds. I felt good when I got back in the car. Turned it on, adjusted the mirror, put it in reverse, and backed up into a Honda Accord. I heard the crunch of metal on metal, and I said, oh, $500 deductible gone. What do you do when life keeps stinging you? You get aggravated, agitated, irritated, frustrated? Or maybe you shrink your vocabulary even more. I went down to 9 words. 9 of them were dirty. Oh, please, you'd have thought I was reciting pi to 1,000 decimal places. Oh, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9, 2, 6. All of a sudden, in the rearview mirror, I saw the faces of my 3 sons. My youngest son. My middle son. My oldest son. Woo-hoo! I had no idea what was on my wife's face because I wasn't about to look. But I did hear her say one word. Why? Now, she didn't mean, why are you teaching our children new vocabulary words? They already knew them. No, she meant, why are we on this journey? In any of life's journeys, you can get stung repeatedly. And when that happens, you need to remember why you were on that journey. Well, I knew the answer, to make family memories. And I thought, well, I'm doing that. But boy, that was not how I wanted to be remembered. Later that day, we got to the cave. Our cave took us down some very narrow passages until we got to a room 250 feet underground called Grand Central Station. It's an enormous room where 6 caves converge. It's big enough to fit 2 football fields. Think of that. The Browns and Bengals could go there and lose simultaneously. This time when I saw the faces of my son, it was a little different. My youngest son, wow. My middle son, whoa. Even my oldest son, yeah. And I said to myself, now that's a memory that I want them to keep. That night before we went to bed, my youngest son came up to me and said, Dad, I'll never forget that cave. And then he gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. And he said, I love you, Daddy. It brought a tear to my eye, my good eye. And in that moment, I realized despite all the problems we had a lasting family memory, and I had my why. And any day that ends that way, well, that's the best number of all, a perfect 10.
Contestant Johnny Randolph. I believe. I believe Johnny Randolph.
The courage to believe in someone is driven by the power of love. And yes, love is contagious. Every time that we express love, we make this world a better place. Good afternoon, Madam Contest Master, and you, fellow believers. Have you ever felt defeated? I have. On the frigid and snowy evening of February 13th, 1995, I sat alone on a rancid, overcrowded Greyhound bus, leaving my home in Detroit, Michigan, to go live with people in Lexington, Kentucky that I really didn't know and who really didn't know me. Now, I was only 15 years old. My mother had recently lost her sight and both of her legs due to complications of diabetes. I was failing high school and had been arrested. Yes, I warned you, I felt defeated. 12 hours later, when I finally arrived in Kentucky, I realized that I needed a shower. Woo! After I stepped off the bus, I saw my auntie for the first time in nearly a decade. You should have seen her. She was a beautiful, petite woman who spoke with a sweet Southern twang, with eyes that radiated conviction and compassion. And when she saw me, she hugged me. Whoa, lady! Slow down. I don't hug people I don't know. I figured that she wanted something. But since I had nothing, I wondered, what was she after? The next day, I enrolled in my new school. After one quick look at my transcript, the tall, imposing vice principal said to me, "Young man, judging from your past, I don't believe you can meet the standards of this school." Then, weeks later, in physical science, as I assumed my normal position in class, Miss Martin, my curly-haired teacher, decided to ask me a question. "Johnny, please tell the class what common element is known as the chemical compound H2O." Of course, I replied, "What the element?" And the class erupted into gales of laughter. Poor Miss Martin. She just dropped her forehead into the palm of her hand and said, "Johnny, I just don't believe you." Days later, I received a welcomed telephone call from my favorite cousin in Detroit. And I expected to talk about what most teenage boys want to discuss: girls. Instead, he told me my best friend had been murdered. His death evoked feelings that the same could happen to, and it scared me. That's when I knew that I had to aspire for more. I secured a tutor and I began to study incessantly. I learned facts and equations, and yes, I learned what H2O represents. On the date of Miss Martin's test, I was ready to succeed. The next day, I couldn't wait to receive my test back until I saw that I failed. I don't believe it. I quit, I told my auntie. I was ready to give up. Then my auntie said, "No, you're not. Baby, I know it's hard, but you can do it because I believe in you." Nobody told me they believed in me. Again, I began to study. But on the date of that next test, I aced that test. On June the 4th, 1997, I received my high school diploma, and 4 years later, I became a college graduate. Fellow Toastmasters, I no longer feel defeated. I've even acquired a little bit of a swagger, but only because my auntie believed in me. Your voice can transform lives by letting someone know that I believe in you. Madam Contest Chair.
Our fifth contestant, Z. Newell. Head or heart? Head or heart, Z. Newell.
Have you ever struggled to take action because the story in your head got in the way of your heart? Maybe you didn't ask that special person out on a date because you told yourself that you would be rejected. Or perhaps you never started that creative business because you told yourself you would fail. Contest chair, fellow Toastmasters and guests, my struggle with head and heart lasted 50 years. I only recently resolved it. And it all had to do with playing sports. It started in 4th grade, watching the kids playing baseball, throwing and catching, laughing and trading high fives. I could feel the pull in my heart. I was hooked. So I got the permission slip and I took it home. Mom, will you sign this so I can play baseball after school? No, Jewish boys don't play sports. You could get hurt. But David Lovitz Jewish, he's the pitcher, best one on the team. That's different. His parents are divorced. I was 9. I couldn't answer that. I still can't. My heart sunk. Mom had the last word. Later that year, the Los Angeles Dodgers, 1965, won the World Series led by Jewish pitcher Sandy Koufax. And he sat out the first game because it fell on Yom Kippur, a Jewish holiday. Man, I wish I had that ammo back here so I could convince Mom. But the season was over. It was too late. Mom won that first battle. But I never bought her story about Jewish boys not playing sports because I had Sandy Koufax in my back pocket. And I kept him there all the way to high school. That's when I discovered lacrosse. Really cool game. Now, I had no idea that all the big senior jocks who played football and hockey, they went out for lacrosse in the spring just for fun to stay limber. First day out, the coach says, "Take a warm-up lap, boys." I didn't know what that was. So we started jogging. This is easy. So I sprinted ahead. "Hey kid, where's the fire?" they yelled out to me. I had no clue about playing sports. But I learned quickly. It was hard, it was rough, and I got hurt. Not really bad, but bad enough to take my mom's story and make it my own. No more sports for this Jewish boy ever again. Even the college I chose, Clark University, had no sports except for a frisbee team. And I didn't even give myself permission to play that. What I did get permission for was to open my heart. It happened one day in philosophy class. My wise professor, Walter Wright, he looked right at me and he said, "It's an excellent philosophy to listen to your heart, to follow your passion, to follow your fire." When I heard that, something inside of me just lit up. I could feel my heart, and I started listening to it and following it. I volunteered. I explored new things. I traveled. I did everything my heart said, except for playing sports. And that went on for the next 4 decades. It was only 2 years ago, when I was 59, that a rock climbing gym opened up down the street from me. Yeah, now there's a sport. I went in, I looked around, I saw the people climbing, laughing, trading high fives. I could feel that same pull in my heart from 50 years ago. I walked up to the desk and they said, "You know, climbing can be dangerous. You might get hurt. You need to sign the liability waiver." The permission slip again. I looked around. Mom wasn't there. Actually, but she was right here. I started to sweat. My heart was pounding. My breathing was shallow, and I had to sit down. And when I did, I found this book somebody had left, The Passion Test. Passion is the inner fire that propels us forward. The inner fire. I could feel the fire inside of me. It was burning right here. I could hear Professor Wright's words. I took a breath. I stepped up, I signed up, and I've been climbing ever since. I love it. The moral of this story, never take somebody else's story and make it your own. Listen to your heart in the immortal words of Walter Wright. Follow your passions, follow your fire. Madam Contest Chair.
Contestant number 6, Carol Erb. Open your eyes. Open your eyes, Carol Erb.
Memories. Happy memories. Many happy memories, a lifetime of happy memories. How many people want that? Doesn't everybody in this room want a lifetime of happy memories? Well, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests, I'm going to share with you today a happy memory, and then I'm going to share with you 3 things that I've been doing that I think will create more connections in my life, which will lead to many more happy memories. Okay, but first, let's go back to, yes, the year 1978, where in 1978, I had just graduated from high school, and my girlfriends and I went to the happiest place on earth. Do you know where the happiest place on earth is? What is it? Disney World, exactly. We went to Disney World that year. We went to Disney World, and in Disney World, there was a ride called Carousel of Progress. I don't know if you remember that ride, or you've been on that ride, or whatever, but just mentioning that, you're back on that ride with me. That ride was all about the invention of electricity, and the celebration of electricity, and how it impacted American lives, and everything that happened with electricity, and the audience literally would rotate from scene to scene to scene, showing the progress of electricity. And yet, while you were moving, the whole audience transitioning from scene to scene, you heard a theme song that was playing over and over and over again. And that song has been in my head these last few months. I love the song. It's out there. You know, it was written by Robert and Richard Sherman, 2 brothers, sons of Russian Jewish immigrants. And they wrote songs for a lot of different movies. They wrote the songs for Mary Poppins, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. They wrote the songs for The Jungle Book, and another theme ride, It's a Small World. That is a song that gets stuck in your brain. But I'm not talking about any of those songs. I'm talking about the theme song for A Carousel of Progress. And the song I remember, it went like this. Now is the time, now is the best time, now is the best time of your life. Life is a prize, live every minute. Open your eyes and see how we live it. Wow. What a song. It's so short. It's so upbeat. It's so lively. I love that song. But the line in there about open your eyes, I think to myself, wow, why would I want to open my eyes? This isn't 1978 anymore, people. It's 2018. And now when I open my eyes, that's all I see are shootings and killings and sadness and tragedy and tweets where people tear one another down and tweets where people talk so loudly about what they think you can't hear anything else. And so I wonder to myself, I don't want to open my eyes. Why would anybody want to open their eyes? And finally, I came to a point where I said to myself, I said, I gotta stop. This has to stop. I can't go on like this. I'm smart enough to know that I've got to change something. I've got to change something within myself. Now I know I can't control you, or you, or you. I can't control what you do or what anybody in this room does, but I can control me. And so what I started to do, I started changing things up. I started doing 3 simple little things because I decided that I not only needed to open my eyes, but I needed to open them wider. I needed to open them wider so that I could make more connections with the people in my life. And those connections would in fact lead me to creating happy memories. So these 3 little things are the things that I've been doing, and I'm going to share them with you right now. The first thing I started doing, I started giving hand hugs. Notice I didn't say handshakes. I'm not kidding. I started giving hand hugs. I extend that right hand when I greet someone and I shake it, but I squeeze it. I give them a little squeeze. It's like my personal hug to them. And with that hand hug, I'm saying to that individual, I care about you. I want to know about you. I want to know who you are and what you're all about. It's my hug to you. It's my hand hug. So that's the first thing I'm doing. The second thing I'm doing is I'm listening with my eyes. That's right. I'm starting to listen not only with my ears, but I'm multiplying it by 2 because I have my eyes listening also. I'm looking at the individual who's talking to me. I'm looking at the individual so I can understand what it is they're saying, so that I know where they're coming from, so that I can hear them more clearly. I'm looking at them. The biggest barrier to that, of course, is the cell phone, because everyone in America right now is hunched over looking at their cell phone. They're actually sitting at tables communicating with the other people at the table on their cell phone. Put the cell phone down, people. We don't need it. We don't need to do that. We're going to listen with our eyes by looking at the individual who is talking to us. The third thing I'm doing is I'm using perhaps the most 3 important words in the English language more frequently, and those words are, help me understand. When my husband comes home and he's cranky after a long day, help me understand. When my brothers or sisters are bickering about something, I begin by saying, help me understand. When coworkers or subordinates come in to talk about an opportunity or something really exciting, I start by saying, help me understand. And once I understand, we're on a new path. We're on a path together. These 3 simple things have helped me focus and create greater personal connections. And these greater personal connections will lead to more happy memories. And that's what we want. That's all you need to do is open your eyes. Madam Toastmaster.
7th contestant, Kyle Allfriend. Imagine the borders of the possible. Imagine the borders of the possible, Kyle Allfriend.
Imagine that you are willing to take a journey to the very borders of the possible and then reach beyond. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, I grew up in the summers with my grandfather, and he taught me basketball, baseball, but more importantly, he told stories. And with his stories, you, the listener, were always the central character. And those stories would begin with imagine, Imagine that you're competing in the Olympics. Imagine you're climbing Mount Everest. And then he'd culminate these stories into brilliant lifelong lessons, such as you will only understand what is possible when you're willing to journey to the very borders of the impossible. My grandfather was everything I understood about strength and courage. However, at 87 years old, he was bedridden, his body eaten away by cancer. One afternoon on my regular visit to the hospital, my grandmother stopped me in the hall. She said, "Kyle, your grandfather wants to keep fighting, but it's over. It's pointless. You need to convince him to give up." No, I can't do that. The doctor said, "Sir, all hope is lost. Your grandfather needs to accept reality." So I walked into that room, looked down. Grandfather looked up. He said, "Kyle, what's on your mind?" I don't know. He raised his hand and pointed at me with that long, bony finger. And he said, "Kyle, don't you ever lie to me. I heard your grandmother. I know what you're going to say. But I'm going to make you be a man and say it to my face. But before you do, first, imagine that you're back on your high school basketball team at the state championship after an undefeated season. But this game doesn't go as you wanted. You're down 36 points. Only 2 minutes remain on that clock. You give up with time on that clock? Or do you walk out on that court knowing you can lose and still play the best 2 minutes of basketball of your entire life? Not because you'll win, but because of who you are. He pushes himself up on that bed. He said, "Kyle, I might lose this one, but as God is my witness, I don't walk off a court until that final buzzer sounds." He falls back on the pillow, his face covered in sweat. And he said, "Your turn. What were you going to say?" I said, I came here to see if you needed ice water. I don't know why I got a lecture from you." And a giant smile came across his face. The following week, that buzzer did sound, and my grandfather passed into the next life. But he did it his way. He never gave up. 10 years later, almost to the very day, in a different hospital with a different doctor, I was told that I needed to face reality. Stage 4 leukemia had advanced too far, too fast, and all hope was lost. But this time, the conversation was about my son. My son, 15 years old. The doctor handed me a form requiring my signature. The "do not resuscitate" instructions. As I held that paper, the strength of my grandfather swelled within my soul, and I tore it in half. The doctor said, "Sir, you need to understand that to continue your son's treatment, it's inhumane. It's pure torture. His survival is impossible." I said, "Maybe. But imagine if we were willing to pursue the impossible, So I removed my son from that hospital and we went to another. And then another, and another, and then another. Until, as the first human recipient of an experimental treatment, those cancer cells began to die. That has now been 9 years. My son graduated from college. He is now married. And together, he and I pursue all of those things he imagined while in those hospitals. We have been skydiving in Maui. We went scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef. 6 weeks ago, we ran the Big Sur International Marathon together. And today, my son is a father himself, my grandson. And I hold my grandson, and I tell him stories about the pursuit and the passion of life itself. And as my grandfather before me, every story begins with imagine. Imagine if you're willing to pursue your every passion, to become the person you were created to be. Imagine if you were willing to pursue the very borders of the possible and reach beyond. Imagine. Thank you.
Thank you. Our 8th contestant, Chris Shade, find your blue star. Find your blue star, Chris Shade.
My youngest brother, Jeff, was incredibly destructive at an incredibly young age. And I was his primary target. He was always breaking my toys, always losing my Hot Wheels cars, always ripping up my precious baseball cards. When these kind of things would happen, I'd complain to one of the people who helped make him. Mom! When my mom would show up and see the extent of the damage, she'd always surprise me. I always thought some supreme punishment should happen, but my mom simply said something like this. Chris, this is just Jeff's way of showing you how much he appreciates your things. He's trying to send you a message. The only message that I got was that he loved ruining my stuff. And I thought my point was finally proven during the Blue Star incident, as it has become known in my family. In 1978, I was 9, Jeff was 2. One of our contestants was at Disney World. In the kitchen, in our Harvest Gold kitchen, on our avocado green fridge, man, it was a cool 70s kitchen, was a piece of paper with my name on it. And next to my name was a list of chores. Now, every time I did a chore, my mom would take a small rubber stamp, kind of like the thing your kindergarten teacher used to grade your papers with. And she would stamp a big blue star next to my name. Now, every time I got enough stars, had done enough chores, I'd get a treat, maybe a new pack of baseball cards. Blue stars were always good for me. I should have known my brother would change that. One day, Jeff found the blue star stamp, marched across the house to my bedroom, where he entered and proceeded to stamp all of my favorite things with dark blue stars. He stampeded through my room. He started with my hand-built model cars. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Then he moved on to pictures of family and friends and teammates on the wall. Stamp, 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 stamp. Their faces covered in blue stars. But he wasn't done yet. He turned his attention to my Star Wars poster and covered blue stars all over a poster already covered in stars. Stamp, 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 stamp. The sense of irony was strong with that one that day. I came home from school to find a galaxy of blue stars all over my things. My field of vision slowly changed from blue to red, and I called one of the people who helped make him. Mom! When my mom showed up, saw the extent of the damage, I shouldn't have been surprised when she said the same thing that she always did. And we had that talk many times over the years, my mom explaining to me the meaning behind some transgression by my brother. My mom had this ability to see under the surface of something to understand its true meaning. I didn't have that ability, and in fact, it would be 32 years before I would. In 2010, I have a 2-year-old of my own, my son Will. Uh-oh, yeah, I know. One day my family was gathered around watching me do something unusual. I was trying on a brand new pair of running shoes. Sometimes this is what passes for entertainment when you have a 2-year-old at home. I had purchased a brand new pair of bright green running shoes, and I was really proud of them. I thought they were cool and fast and young looking. My wife thought I was having a midlife running shoe crisis. But even Will stopped coloring in his coloring book long enough to see what was going on. Sometime later, I decided to go for a run, so I went to look for my new shoes. Couldn't find my shoes. Couldn't find my 2-year-old either. So I walked down to Will's bedroom, where I found him sitting on his bed, happily coloring my new green shoes completely blue with a magic marker. I had an immediate flashback to that blue star incident, so I called one of the people who helped create him. Honey! You know, when my wife showed up, she said something very much like my mom would have. Chris, isn't that cute? Will's just showing you how much he knows you like colorful shoes. Missy had a way of seeing under the surface of something to understand its true meaning as well. But you know what? In that moment, I did too. As my son held up my now blue shoes to me, I knew he was saying, "Hey, Dad, I think those shoes are cool." I don't have 2-year-olds in my life anymore, people that can color my stuff blue. But I think it's important to remember that ability to see under the surface of something to understand its true meaning. So I have a blue star hanging in my home office. Do you ever get one of those email nastygrams from a customer or coworker? You know, one of those that just make your blood start to boil? I know when I get one, I want to start typing my own nastygram right back. But when that happens, I look at that blue star, and I remember to see behind that message. And when I do, I usually find a customer that was promised something they didn't get, or a coworker with a problem to solve. I usually see an opportunity to help. I know you all sometimes see things that make your blood boil. I know sometimes you hear things that make you want to shout for your mom. Remember to take some time out of your life to find that thing that reminds you to see under the surface of those messages to find their meaning. Remember to find your blue star. Madam President.
And final competitor, Colleen Kosan, switch off, switch on. Switch off, switch on, Colleen Kosan.
Mom, I'm bored. Great, son. Embrace it. Ponder with me. When was the last time you permitted yourself to be bored? Yesterday? Last week? Last month? Perhaps you do not remember. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and distinguished guests, I invite you, no, I encourage you to step forward and invite boredom into your life. What is boredom? According to Wikipedia, is a psychological or emotional state we find ourselves in at no particular time. I remember as a child, not in 1978, we used to play outside, and we didn't come in until the porch lights came on and the street lights came on. Boredom was encouraged. We had one television in the entire house. The radio, retuned for a couple stations. Gaming systems, we had one much later in my childhood, and we had 2 corded telephones. Now, the stimuli is overwhelming. It's everywhere. We have at least one television in every bedroom. The radio stations are too numerous to mention. The phones are in our hands with the gaming systems on them. The external stimuli is overwhelming. Boredom is not encouraged. What do you see here? The thinker. Many of us know this as the Rodin thinker. He's thinking. He doesn't have a gadget in his hand. He has switched off the external stimuli and switched on his internal mind. Today, we're going to talk about 3 reasons you should do that also to invite boredom back into your life. Flow. According to Psychology Today, flow is the continuous stream of something. Many of us think of the ebb and the flow of water, but today I want you to consider the ebb and flow of your thoughts. The flow of your thoughts that continue, and that thought goes to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one, until time flies away and you're involved. And our greatest inventions come from that flow. Because when you permit that boredom, flow happens, creativity occurs. Switch off your external stimuli and switch on that internal mind. Curiosity. What are you curious about? What do you want to know more about? How it works? What is your passion? It's in there. It's hidden. What do you want to know more about? Curiosity. Bring it out. Invite that boredom in and bring that curiosity out. Originally, one of the main ways for diabetics to get their insulin was through a needle. But somebody was curious. What if we could do it a different way? Insulin pump. Stations in space? Are we crazy? Curious. Let's think about it. Can we problem solve that? Space station? Should we? Could we? How long can we? Boredom, curiosity came, and then the problem solving along. Switch off that external stimuli and switch on that internal mind. Mindfulness. According to mindful.org, mindfulness is being in the intense, right now, immersed. What's going on? What are you thinking about? Is that woman ever going to get off? We're finally done. Whew. What are we having for dinner? I miss my kids. How come I came? Where am I going? Mindful. Right here. Breathe in with me deep. Breathe out. When we encourage that mindfulness, we have a calm. And when we become calm, we become more effective in our relationships and our work. And with that calm comes mental clarity. Boredom, mindfulness leads to that mental clarity. Switch off that external stimuli and switch on that internal mind. Flow, creativity, curiosity, problem solving, mindfulness, mental clarity. I empower each one of you to step forward, invite boredom back into your life, switch off your external stimuli, switch on that internal mind. Take your life from to here. Madam Toastmaster.